Hello, hello, hello. This is Elizabeth Clare Brewington, and I am with Brightside Global Trade. We are so excited today. In our studio, we have Jeff, who is an author of this amazing book about higher. I'm going to let him introduce you to his book, but it's really about a higher self-expression and how can you find that genius in you or a genius around you. So it is something that totally attracted me to the title of his book, and it's coming to me, and I can't wait to read it. So, Jeff, tell us about yourself and tell us about this amazing book that you're launching.
Sure. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I'm an author and I teach meditation. Uh,
Okay.
and I've lived a sort of unusual life. It started out very ordinary, and then at some point I got very inspired by the possibility of spiritual awakening, and I left my career and everything that I was doing in order to pursue spiritual practice as deeply as I could. And I did nothing but that for about 20 years. And it was joyful. And over the past, starting at the end of that time and leading up until now, so for the past 10 to 15 years or so, I've been writing and teaching and taking the fruits of everything that I've discovered and trying to share it with people. And that's, this book comes out of all that effort. So as you said, it's called Higher Self-Expression. And
Mm,
it's about genius. I've always felt that whatever we want to call spiritual work, that the result should be something extraordinary emerging into the world. That all of that spiritual work shouldn't just lead to private experiences. It should also be publicly visible uh, demonstrations of new possibilities.
yeah,
Uh, and
that's true.
and I've always been, besides being a spiritual seeker, I also have always been an artist in different ways, and I've always been fascinated by the similarities between great art and great artists, and those people who are pursuing spiritual awakening in different forms. And this book is a way to bring those together in order to really explore the source of genius. In all different fields of endeavor, there are times when someone does something that everyone around them goes, oh my God, that's never been, where did that come from? And that's the question always, where did it come from?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, how would you define a genius?
Well, so this is very interesting. I would define a genius as someone who is open to the creative genius of the universe. I don't think people are geniuses as much as we live in a universe which is inherently creative and inherently
Mm-hmm.
capable of genius. And there are certain people who seem to be open and receptive to being vehicles for that
Yeah,
genius. And this is one of the things you find. It's fascinating when you read about people who have exhibited a certain amount of genius. Hardly anybody says, I'm a genius, I invented all this stuff. They just say, I don't know where it comes from. It comes from somewhere, and then I
yeah.
just let it come through me.
I had a friend in school, and at the age of 12, she proclaimed that she was a genius. She used to say this all the time, and we used to think she was a little, whack, whack. But she is a genius, and she's, gone on to being an inventor and got many patents in her name. So, I think, when people say that you shouldn't say negative things, you manifest, good things in the world. So I think if you do say, I'm an achiever, I'm a leader, I'm whatever, it does manifest it into you being something, special. So I love this book. I think that the pandemic has taught us all a lot about life, about ourselves. And I myself, did a lot of meditations in the past, but recently, when I tried to meditate, I was so distracted with all the worries of the
Mm.
world. I couldn't even sit down with myself and just, breathe. So since you've got so you're right. So a genius. So how does one get in touch with themselves and discover that they are a genius? Where does that all begin?
Right. And so, and the way that I would want to say that is, how do we get in touch with the source of genius in ourselves?
Yes.
Because
How do we?
we all have the source of genius inside us. So I start the book speaking about Gertrude Stein, and she was an experimental American writer who lived in Paris and became the center of a very, I mean, an amazing creative circle that included Picasso and Matisse as painters, and it included F. Scott Fitzgerald and James Joyce and Ernest Hemingway. I mean, some of the most creative individuals of that generation were floating in her circles. And she was someone who definitely said, I'm a genius. Not everyone
Yeah.
loved her for that, but she did. And, uh, and I think she was a genius. And lots of people think that, but she had some very interesting things to say. And she provides some of the framework I use through the book. First of all, she talked about how difficult it is to be a genius because, and you'll appreciate this as a meditator. She said, because you have to sit around and do absolutely nothing a lot of the time. you
Yes, it's true. You got
know,
to really, yeah, because it's only when you're in a space that's where you get in touch with the universe or God or what. That's that space that you discover yourself and you figure it out.
absolutely.
So so this is an incredible journey. So you talked about several geniuses in the book. So don't without giving us everything because we want people to buy this book. Tell us a little bit about what we can expect from the book and what can readers expect and why they should buy this book.
Well, you'll see in the book, you'll see a lot of different examples of people who have exhibited genius of different types. And some will be more familiar to people and others will be less familiar. But as you read through the book, you start to see, oh yeah, there's something similar about the way these people are approaching life. Uh,
Yep.
that they are, first of all, they're deeply inspired by something beyond themselves. They are aware that there is a source of creativity that, and this is why I think this is so important for our time and for our culture, because we are culturally conditioned to see ourselves as the achievers, right?
Yeah.
We are the creators. And when you look at these examples of genius, of course they were all busy doing a lot of things, but they were making themselves available for something to pass through them, to come through them, to emerge. That's why Gertrude Stein said you have to sit and do nothing so much, because you have to be available. If you're too busy just
Yeah.
doing, there's no room for genius to
Yeah.
come through. Uh,
Yeah.
and then, I talk about William James, who was her mentor and famous American psychologist, and where she had a very secular psychological view of genius, he was a spiritualist, and he really felt that when you were allowing and becoming available, you were letting higher mind come through you. There are higher potentials and capacities of human consciousness that you can become a vehicle for. Uh,
Yeah.
and then that you see running through, and then I got to speak about so many people that I'm fascinated by. Anais Nin, the well, Cuban but lived in France, writer who wrote incredible diaries and just lived an extraordinary life of ongoing genius. And I mentioned surfers. There's a surfer named Jeffrey Clark who has a fascinating story. When he was in high school, he lived in San Francisco and he was looking over the cliffs and he thought he saw a wave like a mile off the coast. And so he went out there. No one would go with him because it seemed crazy. And he
Yeah. Yeah.
discovered that there's a huge wave off the coast of Northern California. Today it's called Maverick, and it's one of the most famous surfing waves. And he would go out. So the story is he went out every day and surfed by himself this wave that was, 40, 50 feet high, risking his life. Nobody would go with him because no one believed that there was an actual wave there. He
Yeah.
did that for 15 years all by himself. And I use
Wow.
that story to show that one thing you see in geniuses is they are tenaciously devoted to whatever it
Yes.
is that they're in love with. It happened to be surfing for him. It was writing for Anais Nin. It was art for Kandinsky, who's someone else that I speak a lot about. But you start to see, oh, these people, they were connected to something. They were open to something, and their own art. Gertrude Stein, I quote at the
Yeah.
beginning. She said, in order to be open to genius, you have to be able. Now, the way she said it was, you have to be able to talk and listen at the same time. And I could really relate to that because my own experience of the creative process is is at the same time that I'm creating, right, which is the sort of talking or writing, I'm also having to inside listen for where the source of what I'm creating is coming from. So I have to hear it as it's being
Yep.
given to me while I'm sharing it. And you have to do them simultaneously.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you have to have that determination and that belief that that this is what you want to do. Wow, that's incredible. That's a great story, actually. And he just kept pursuing it and kept pursuing it. And um, so, do you think that everyone in the world is a genius, or is there certain people that are geniuses? And I
I
have to
think,
ask that question.
yes, well, I think genius is inherent in reality. It's part of, we live in a creative universe that has an unlimited potential for novelty. And and we all potentially can open to that novelty. Now, whether we all will or not is,
Yeah,
but we all could. There's, and I guess
that's
one thing I would want to say is that in the world we live in, I mean, look, we're living in a world that is tremendously challenged by in all kinds of ways, and we need to access greater genius because we're not going to solve problems like climate change, uh, political polarization, just with by muscling through it. We need to access really radically new ways of being, and that's going
no,
to take.
absolutely. And I think you hit on something. I think the world wants to define us of what they want us to be. Like families want to define you of what you should be. Your neighbors want to define you of what you should be. Your school defines you of what should you should be. And I've always wanted to write a feature on what if you grew up in the world with no rule, no one would teach you anything. You just had to learn on what kind of person would you have been versus the way we'd go, with all this kind of thing. So you hit on something that says that if you if the world defines you, then you become what the world wants you to be. But is that really you, or is there that genius in you? Well, what do you think about that?
Well, I think you're absolutely right. In the book, I
Yeah.
one of the people I speak about is the Christian monk Thomas Merton, uh, who was a astounding writer and a real genius, and one of the very first pioneers of interfaith religious dialogue. He went to China and to northern India and met with the Dalai Lama way before it was popular.
Yeah.
And uh, and the thing that I resonate with in him so much is he talks about authenticity, and he has the quote that I put in the book, which and I'm paraphrasing now, but he essentially says most poets, like most monks, never become the person they were intended to be by God because they're too busy being the person that their society is telling them to be. They never
Yep.
get around to listening deeply enough to hear how their inner spirit wants to be. And I think that's
Yeah.
what you're talking about. We're shaped by cultural
Yeah.
norms, by personal fears, by all kinds of things. and there's very little creativity in that. And when this is the interesting thing about these creative geniuses. They mostly don't live conventional lives. And some of them
Yep.
kind of live lives that, we look at it and go, oh, I don't know if I'd want to go that far out.
That's right. That's right. To what extent would you go? But if you look at even Dalai Lama, he's a homeless person. I mean, the Chinese threw him out. India hosted him, and he lives in this universe, and he's impacted so many people. And Buddha had to go into the forest and discover himself. And had he stayed as a prince, he'd have been a different person. So yeah, so I think this is a great time during the pandemic, and we're hopefully coming to the end of it with the vaccinations. Or it's probably never going to go away, but we'll at least have some normalcy.
Yes.
But this is a perfect time to read Jeff's book and really get to know that genius inside of you, because you'd hate to live your life and you miss being what you're supposed to be. So I think this is a great time to discover that inner sense of you, or discover a talent that you didn't know you had. So Jeff, I think this is a great book. So it's available everywhere. Amazon, is it Audible, and
Yeah,
for
it's
Kindle?
available
And
right now on Amazon. It's available on my website, which is just my name.com.
yes, and that's great. So we'd love to get the book. I know one is coming to me, so I'll write a review and let all my viewers know. And if you do read Jeff's book, or you're following him, or you're looking at this interview and something attracts you, write us a comment and take a picture of the book so we know you purchased it. And we will give you 2 tickets to our upcoming conference. We're doing one every single month, and you can get a chance to win some incredible prizes, because every single month we're giving away books, we're giving away gifts from our sponsors. So make sure you stay tuned in to Brightside Global Trade TV, and you can visit me at brightsideglobaltrade.org and see all our videos. And we also have our Brightside Club that meets on the first and the third Monday of every month. So lots happening. And thank you, Jeff, for joining us today. And make sure you get his book. So would you like to give us a quick 3-minute about the book, the name of the book, why
Sure.
you should get the book,
The
and
book
how
is
you think the book's going to help us?
And also, thank you so much for having me. It's been delightful. The book is called Higher Self-Expression: How to Become an Artist of Possibility, which I see geniuses create new possibilities for the rest of us. They do something that's never been done, and suddenly everybody can do it. But you have that capacity as well. That's the whole point. And you may be exhibiting it now, you may not be, but you could open more to it, I'm sure. So you can find it on Amazon. You can find it on jeffcarreira.com. And I hope you'll read it. And if you do, I hope you'll contact me and tell me what you think. And I've loved speaking with you. So thank you so much.
Yes. So, and I will also have all of Jeff's information in the comment section as well, so that you never miss anything. So happy watching, and don't forget to subscribe.